The disgrace was more than I could bear, but I didn't want everyone to see me cry, so I ran into the bedroom where I could have a real tantrum in private. You know, that's what you light-skinned people do. Y'all have tantrums. Well, hello there, love bugs. Hello there, Bellas. If you have not already done so, please remember to like, share to Facebook, subscribe, and visit uptopbeauty.com for these Mick shades in red. We have them coming in black, tortoise, and I think another color. We also have these headbands coming in. They are like, anyway, just go on over there and check it out. And if you are not already a part of this book club, please hit the Patreon link below and or the join button here on the YouTube. And for a small monthly fee of $5, you babies, yes, you can be privy to all the shenanigans before the YouTube gets it, if the YouTube gets it. Now, let's talk about, yes, the next book. Be My Baby. How I Survived Mascara, Miniskirts, and Madness. Or My Life as a Fabulous Ronette. Together. I always felt sorry for Dad. He dreamed of being a jazz drummer, but it just wasn't happening for him. He was white. And in those days, most of the jazz bands in Harlem were black. Besides, he couldn't read music, and that limited his chances of going professional more than anything else. But instead of accepting his fate or working to change it, Dad just drank, hoping that might help him forget his lost dreams. It didn't, of course. His drinking only made him more depressed. And after a while, he just started drifting further and further into his depression. By the time I got to junior high school, Dad started coming home later and later every night. And then when he finally did stumble in, he was usually a mess. Of course, my mom had no patience for any of that. She put up with it as long as she could, but after they signed the lease on the new place, she knew it was time to lay down the law. Louis, she told him, this is our chance for a new life, but we got a lot more expenses now. So we both got to get serious. That means you gonna have to stop drinking and coming home late and running around with all these no accounts in the neighborhood. Damn, it sounded like her father was a neighborhood drunk. That's what it sounded like to me, you know, and we all got him. Every neighborhood got him. I will, baby, he promised. But Mom had her doubts. So did I, especially after the day I went to Macy's with him to pick out furniture for the new apartment. I could smell the alcohol on his breath the minute the elevator doors closed, and all the way up to home furnishing. All I could do was wonder if Dad was going to be in shape to buy furniture. He wasn't. She said that as soon as her and her father got to the furniture department, he found a chair and passed out. Ronnie had to go around and pick out the furniture. Okay, I want this, I want that, blah, 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 right? Not that they're a rich family and she could be like, okay, give me that Barker lounge. Father still passed out. She walks over to her father, reaches in his pockets. She rolled him. Not really. But she reached in his pockets, pulled out the money, and paid for the furniture. It was the night before the second month's rent on our new place was due, and Dad didn't come home with the check. My mother sat up until 2 a.m., and when he didn't come home, she locked the door and shut off all the lights. The next day, she called his grandmother in Florida and told her to come and get him. I loved my father, but I can't say that I blamed her. I guess I knew in my heart that we'd lost Dad long before he finally left the house. By the time I got to junior high, I was already very conscious of my looks. In school, I discovered that being a half-breed had its advantages since light-skinned girls was considered pretty. See what I'm talking about? The colorism back then bred hate between light skin and dark skin. Because I've been brown skinned my whole life, that was never my fight. All right, I know I'm not light skinned and I know I'm not dark skinned. I don't have a dog in this fight. I am what I am. I'm gonna let you two mother hunchies fight it out. Me, I ain't worried. I do have a cousin that based her entire being. You hear me? Her entire being. I'm red. I'm always gonna get over. I don't give a fuck if she ain't have a tooth in her mouth, a arm missing, and a leg. In her mind, because she's light skinned, she will always have an advantage over everything and everyone else. But that was what was put in her mind. That's what people constantly fed to her. Men constantly telling her, oh, she red, you red. Come here, red bone. Ronnie Spector is confirming that entire sentiment. I'm light-skinned, so I'm better. I'm light-skinned, so I have an advantage. I'll move forward. But even though a lot of guys at school came after me, I still didn't feel like I really fit in with any one group. The blacks never really accepted me as one of them. The white kids knew I wasn't white. And the Spanish kids didn't talk to me because I didn't speak Spanish. I had a little identity crisis when I hit puberty. I remember I used to sit in front of the mirror trying to describe just what I was. Let's see now. I think I've got white eyes. What is white eyes? What is that? I've got white eyes, but these are black lips. My ears, are they white ears or black ears? When I was in junior high, my mom waited tables at a place called King's Donuts. So Estelle and I used to hang out there after school. We told mom we liked to visit her at work, but she knew the real reason we came around was because the diner was right across from the Apollo Theater. I've said several times that basically my two grandmothers raised me. My mother paid for me, but my grandmothers raised me. Okay, my mother always had a job. She always worked. She didn't give two craps about the fact that she had me at 15 years old. She had a job and she was working it, okay? Because she was determined to pay for her daughter. When my mother got out of high school, she made me do what she did. She got a full-time job at the Smithsonian. It was a federal government job. Okay, and she went to college at the same time. So if I wasn't with her at her full-time job at the Smithsonian, I was with her in classes at UDC. What made me feel so special was the fact that my mom worked at a place that people visited to receive history and culture. And I felt like I had insider privilege. The Apollo was the most exciting spot in Harlem when I was growing up. All the biggest black stars came to play there, and there always seemed to be bright lights and big crowds lined up around the place. And Estelle and I were both naturally drawn to that kind of excitement. Not that we were ever allowed inside the place. My mother made it clear that the Apollo Theater was strictly off limits. In her mind, the Apollo represented the world of drugs and sex and all kinds of other grown-up things that she thought we were still too young to see. She didn't even like us hanging around Kings. As soon as we walked in the door, she'd stick us downstairs in the employees' lounge where we would do our homework until she got off work. Don't talk to anyone on the streets, she'd warn us whenever we left Kings alone. A lot of those people are thieves or conmen or junkies. Junkies? Somebody was always talking about junkies when I was growing up. Me too. My mother used to be like, ooh, that's a junkie, stay away. Ooh, they do that juggy, baby. Leave them alone. That hair wall. That's just what she used to say. Ooh, and she made me terrified of that shit. I never saw one, but boy, did I want to. Me too. Until I seen it. And I was like, I would cringe getting my polio vaccine, but for some reason, I was fascinated by the idea of these people who stuck needles in their arms every day. I couldn't wait to lay eyes on someone who did that. Until I did. At Shaw Junior High, let me tell you something, baby. When they showed us this movie called Stone Cold Junkie, man, that terrified me. I mean, for real. All I remember is that junkie shaking and shivering on the toilet because he could not get whatever it was that was in that needle, and I didn't want to do it. I already got a very, very weak stomach, y'all. Very weak. If I eat something bad or sort of bad, it's coming out the top or the bottom. And I just know what that man looked like that was on that toilet. Stone junkie. Stone cold junkie. One day, my cousin May spotted a junkie outside my grandma's house. Hey, look, out the window, she said. It's a junkie! I jumped up from the couch and ran towards the window, but my grandmother stopped me halfway. Don't you go over there to that window, Ronnie, she commanded. You don't need to see nobody on dope. That just killed me because all I wanted to see was what a real life junkie looked like. But it was forbidden. I never did get to see a dope addict unless you count Frankie Lymon. And he wasn't even a dope addict when I first met him. A lot of entertainers can't or won't tell you where they got their style from. But I know exactly where I got my voice. Frankie Lymon. If he had made a record called Why Do Fools Fall in Love, I wouldn't be sitting here writing this today. A lot of people pay homage to Frankie Lymon. I forget the particular books we've read that pay homage to Frankie Lymon, but a lot of people say that when they saw Frankie Lymon as a teenager on television, it gave them the gumption to feel like, well, if Frankie Lymon can do it, I can do it too. I was 12 years old when I first heard Frankie and the Teenagers singing Why Do Fools Fall in Love on my grandmother's radio. Frankie had the greatest voice I'd ever heard, and I fell in love the minute that record came on. I couldn't tell if he was black or white or what. I just knew that I loved the boy who was singing that song. I would sit by my grandmother's old field coat every night waiting to hear him sing. Why do birds sing so gay? And when he finally came on with his innocent little voice and perfect diction, my hands got all sweaty, my toes curled up, and I climbed right under the old box radio, trying to get as close to the sound as I could. I pressed my head into the speaker until I got Frankie going right through my brain. Ronnie, you keep on like that, you'll go deaf, my grandmother warned me, but I didn't care. If they'd kept playing that song, I would have stayed under the radio forever. That's exactly how I felt about New Edition's Candy Girl. I was amazed when I found out that Frankie was black. Where did he learn that perfect diction? I wondered. Not at home. I went to a black church and I couldn't understand a word they said. Even more surprising to me was the fact that Frankie was only 13 years old, just a year older than I was. And again, referring back to the books that we've read previously, that's the reason why so many young artists came out. Because if Frankie Lymon is either 1 year or 2 years older than me or younger than me and he made it, then that means that I can make it too. When I found that out, I knew I had to meet him. And every night I prayed to God that I would. That's how much this boy meant to me. When I finally did get to meet Frankie, it happened through such a strange coincidence that I'm sure it was fated to be. My mother was waiting tables at King's Donuts, and one day she was telling another waitress how much I worshiped Frankie Lymon. That boy is all Ronnie ever talks about, Mom said. She wants to meet him so bad, but I don't even know where to start looking for him. Now, remember what I said about Pisces, that Pisces are believers in dreams, and they will believe in your dreams too. So I wonder if her mother was a Pisces, because for a mother to just be like, how could I help my daughter meet Frankie Lymon? Frankie Lymon, the other waitress said. BB, he's sitting right there in your station. The waitress pointed to this 13-year-old kid who was sitting on a stool at the counter. That's Frankie Lymon, my mother gasped. I just ordered that little old boy a meatloaf and gravy sandwich. Then she walked right over and told Frankie that he wasn't going to see his lunch until he promised to show up at her daughter, Ronnie's 13th birthday party. All right, he laughed. I'll be there. I gotta eat. Is it okay if I bring my little brother too? You could bring your brother, she said. Just make sure you come. When my birthday finally rolled around, I was a 13-year-old wreck. All of my cousins were in the living room waiting for my party to start, but I just sat there by the front door waiting for Frankie. I looked all goofy with a big red bow in my hair, and my eyes were caked over with mascara that my mother helped me put on for this special occasion. Whenever the doorbell rang, I jumped 4 inches. Oh, God, I'd whisper, is that Frankie? Please, God, let it be Frankie. But every time it turned out to be just another cousin. At last, my cousin Elaine peeked out the window and screamed, he's here! Ronnie, Frankie and his brother are coming up the walk. I crossed my legs and pulled myself straight up on the couch while Elaine opened the door. But when she swung it open, it wasn't Frankie at all, just 2 boys who looked like him. Hi, said the taller one, introducing himself. I'm Louis Lymon. He must have seen how confused I was because he was quick to add, I'm Frankie's brother. And this is our other brother, Howard. Louis, Howard. I was devastated. It was only my 13th birthday, and already I'd been stood up by the most important boy in my entire life. The disgrace was more than I could bear, but I didn't want everyone to see me cry, so I ran into the bedroom where I could have a real tantrum in private. You know, that's what you light-skinned people do. Y'all have tantrums. Naturally, my mother and every one of my girl cousins followed right behind me. Oh, Ronnie, my mother said, reaching over to retie my big red bow, which had slipped down around my neck. You ain't got to carry on like this. For all you know, Frankie might be planning to come around later. She finished tying the bow and started wiping the tears off my cheeks. And even if he doesn't, you wouldn't want him to hear from his brothers that you spent your whole birthday pouting in your room, would you? I shook my head no. Good, she said. Then come on back out here and take some pictures with Frankie's brother, Louis. He came all the way down here for your birthday. Okay, I said, and I went back out to join my party. Louis turned out to be a sweet boy, and to this day, I treasure the snapshot I have of me cutting my 13th birthday cake with the brother of my childhood idol. I had barely gotten over the disappointment of Frankie standing me up when he finally showed up, unannounced, a few weeks later. Nadra's mother, Aunt Susu, was over to our house, and she was the one who answered the door. Oh, Frankie, she said after he introduced himself. Ronnie will be so happy to see you. When I laid eyes on him, I nearly fell over. I couldn't believe this kid was only a year older than me. He looked like a grown man. He walked right over to me, all snappy, holding a long-stemmed red rose. He wore a big white carnation in his lapel, and it was obvious from the way he strutted across the room that he was completely full of himself. He wasn't what I expected at all. Frankie, I stuttered. I'll just leave you kids alone, Aunt Susu said, walking out of the room. Frankie leaning forward to kiss me on my lips. What? Now, would I allow Ronnie Devo to kiss me on my lips at 13 years old? Probably because I'm not aware of the monococculi. But okay, you're even more beautiful than my brothers promised. I could smell alcohol on his breath, which reminded me of my father. Wait a minute. What kind of problems does this little boy have? Well, we know how tragic Frankie Lymon's story is, but that's telling to me. He ain't just pick up the bottle yesterday and started drinking. But I tell you guys, if you see a mother hunchy and they do some reckless shiz, it's not because they just woke up one day and was like, oh, I'm gonna do this reckless shiz. It's because they've done the reckless shiz before and gotten away with it. I instinctively pulled back, but Frank hardly even noticed. He just slid right down on the couch and patted the cushion next to him. Come on, baby. We do want to get to know each other, don't we? That scared me. That makes me feel like he done hunched on another girl his age with an adult in the next room, and it was okay. It was so confusing. The Frankie Lymon I'd dreamed about was the little boy who sang on the records, a kid so sweet and innocent and real that he made me want to climb inside the radio. But looking at this cocky little midget, girl, he was a small man, but stop it, girl. You know that word is inappropriate now. It's called little person. Okay, but y'all don't know no better. It's the 60s. Looking at this little man sitting in my house, I started to wonder if that kid even existed. Suddenly, the whole situation just seemed so uncomfortable. I knew I had to get out of it as soon as I could. Make yourself at home, Frankie, I said, getting up from the couch. I've got to take care of something in the kitchen. I walked straight into the bathroom and locked the door behind me. When I felt sure he'd be gone, I opened the door, tiptoed down the hall, and peeked into the living room. I breathed a sigh of relief when I saw that the room was empty. I went in and flopped down on the living room couch, and it was like Frankie had never even been there. I half believed I dreamed the whole thing until I looked down at the place where he'd been sitting. That's when I found the long-stemmed red rose that he'd handed me when he walked in. In spite of how Frankie turned out, I still loved his singing. By the time I got to George Washington High School, I already knew that show business was going to be my life.